Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is Saturday, April 2nd, 2021, and we would like to acknowledge for those that celebrate it. It is what we call Resurrection or Easter weekend, and we just want to acknowledge that and wish you a happy Resurrection Easter weekend on behalf of Dee Dee's Cry. We're going to jump right in because some of you that may be watching may be headed to the salon, to the barbershop to get dyed and fried, and get your children ready for still a unique time during a holiday. And so we're going to jump in, introduce Toy, our executive director and founder here at Dee Dee's Cry, and we will be right back with you with Miss Crystal to talk about tips and tricks to help your children develop socially and emotionally. Toy?
Okay, thank you, James. Good morning, everyone. My name is Toy Burton, and I am the founder and executive director of Dee Dee's Cry Suicide Prevention and Family Support. Dee Dee's Cry is named after my sister, Danita Shane Morris, who died by suicide when she was 23 years old in 1986. I started Dee Dee's Cry in 2017 after I noticed that organizations that focus on suicide prevention and mental health education didn't have their events in the Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan neighborhoods of Boston, communities of color. So Dee Dee's Cry is about suicide prevention, mental health education for people of color.
Absolutely.
And yes, go on, James.
No, I was going to say absolutely. And also we wanted to remind folks that of the team and how they can support and give to Dee Dee's Cry. So Toy, they can hear you while the fly is up. Let them know how they can support and give and what we offer as far as Dee Dee's Cry.
So you can go on our website, deedescry.com, DeeDeesCry.com, and there is a donate button, so you can give there. You can follow us on Instagram at Dee Dee's Cry, like the Facebook page. If you would rather pay by a check, make the check out to the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute, put Dee Dee's Cry on the memo line, and mail it to 2 John Elliott Square, Roxbury, Mass. 02119.
Thank you so much for that, Toy. And we're going to go get ready to jump right in with our, I won't say guest, but our facilitator this morning. And Toy, we're going to go ahead and let you go. And you'll be back toward the end today. But Miss Crystal, welcome. Happy Resurrection Weekend. What are we talking about this morning?
Today, we're talking about the importance of being able to identify with peers. So children being able to be around other children that look like them, talk like them, act like them in a variety of ways, whether it's race, gender, identity, culture, disabilities. Being around peers that are similar to you is very important.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say, for those of you that watch every week, we usually have a PowerPoint presentation, but Miss Crystal today and I both just wanted to be more engaging. She's leading it. So we're going to talk today versus just showing you the slides and talking. We're going to ask you to engage with us today via the comments and just check in with us.
Yes. So today I want to I'm speaking to everyone, but a particular population today. I'm speaking to foster parents. I'm speaking to families who have adopted children who may have lived in one neighborhood and now live in another neighborhood that's predominantly one race, or in a school that's predominantly one race, or children with different abilities such as autism, Down syndrome, blind, deaf, any type of course, children who are blind or deaf are typically in a school that caters to them, but that doesn't mean they're in a neighborhood per se, or that doesn't mean they necessarily have friends of that similar ability. So basically I'm speaking to you guys who have children who are in situations and in environments where they don't have other counterparts that look like them, and really trying to stress the importance of what to consider, what to think about, and what to do, which is simple, but maybe you just weren't thinking about it. I think some parents assume that, as long as there's love and stability, that's enough. I think that's required. I think that's important. I think that's number one. However, that's not all.
Gotcha. And you're talking about, I mean, the love is good from like a parental standpoint, but peer interaction and peer engagement is huge too, correct?
It is, because that's who they identify with. It's good to have adults that look like them, yes, as far as role models, but their peers is who they learn from. That's their age bracket. That's who they learn language from. That's who they learn how to play, how to act, how to treat people. So the parents are a guide, but the children is what really helps create and foster that identity. The same way we want role models like teachers, presidents, police, and etc. that look like our children. Children are being around peers that look like them is a little bit more important. I think that's the baseline. Being around your peers should be first, right? Because when you're 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, maybe 6, 7, 8, you're not thinking about what you want to be per se when you grow older. At a certain point, having role models that look like them are very crucial. But for those earlier years, it's their peers.
Okay.
You know?
I like how you baseline, because having that peer sort of similar example sort of sets a standard for looking for people that look like you based on your baseline experience.
Absolutely. And it plays a role in their identity, in their reflection, how they see themselves. Like, I don't want to say names. You don't want a particular race or a Black child or a white child in a neighborhood with only white children or only Black children, because different cultures act different ways.
Yep.
Different cultures reprimand and teach different ways. And if you can identify with your culture, with your peers, you start to feel a certain way. Like, why do I look like this? How come my skin is darker? Or, how come they all got blonde and blue and straight hair and mine's is kinky and curly and still just as beautiful? But
Right.
It looks different. So you start to create this self-reflection that they're kind of dealing with on their own and may not really know how to express on the earlier years, but don't think they're not thinking about it.
Another piece is two things specifically talk about, you're saying mixed cultures and the ethnicities. We're not saying particularly mixed, but though there may be a mix, make sure that children have some sort of peer engagement with how they identify. And we identify, as Black. And one of the things that we talk about, around Kwanzaa is just collective community and things like that. So they definitely need that. And speaking of things like Kwanzaa, as talking about Black, how do you learn about those traditions like Kwanzaa? How do you learn about, when I refer to Resurrection Weekend, we talk about fried and dyed the hair and all the other stuff. Like, those are cultural sort of norms that you do, presumably, as you're saying, get from these peer engagements, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
And children can be not purposefully mean,
mm-hmm.
but they're just so blunt and they have no filter. A children will look at mommy and be like, hey, you're fat, with no type of, oh, that might hurt mommy's feelings, depending on the age of the child. So imagine what they're doing to the other child, or what they're saying to that child that looks different. So you have to worry about the child who's not immersed in a culture and an environment that looks like them, but you also have to think about those other children that are curious why you don't look like us. Why does your hair look like that? Why is your skin this color? Or, why does your hair or your clothing or your whole identity will be questioned amongst children because they don't understand. I believe it's innocent on the earlier years. You haven't taught them. It's not molded. Parents may not think about it. And to speak to parents, sometimes you don't know when it's time to have these conversations, right? Yep. But to me, I think it's good to start those words of affirmation that we spoke about a couple of sessions back, because maybe you don't know when to have the conversation, but you're instilling that self-esteem. You're instilling that confidence in them early. That way, the words of affirmation will allow them to kind of have that shield or that barrier when that time comes.
Yep.
And then hopefully they'll be having a conversation with you about who said what, how it made them feel, because you opened up the door to have a conversation, and they will bring it to you, but you got to read between the lines.
And last week, having those combos with them will open up the door to find out kind of what's going on if they're dealing with this and not in or around their peers and other cultures where they sometimes may be questioned about their identity and how they look.
Absolutely. And I think some parents may also be a little absent-minded, not aware that whether you are the same culture and you just happen to move to a neighborhood or a school, so the child comes home to a family that looks like them, but goes out into the world of people that don't look like them. Considering everything that's going on now, I'm sure they've seen the news at some point in time. I'm sure, depending on the age of the child, it's being spoken about in school. Who wants to sit in a classroom talking about racism and Black people, and you the only Black person in the classroom? That's awkward. That's weird. That requires a whole bunch of thoughts to go through your child's head about their identity, as they're talking about racism in school when they're in a classroom with people that don't look like them. And then at home, you're not having the conversation with them. So now that ties back into the mental health piece and how they view themselves, feeling like they're possibly not good enough for society. Because why am I in this? Why only me? Why am I the only one in this school? Why am I the only one that looks like this? Should I not be here?
I mean, especially some of the points you made before that, along with talking with them, but then if this is not addressed, then they wind up not having a way to express themselves in this type of situation or environment. Dealing with race can potentially, on how it's being handled between their peers, can kind of set a foundation for them to have a brick wall up against a lot of stuff always based on what happened early. So let's reiterate the fact, talking to our children and young people and allowing them to have opinions. That's one of the main things I get out of like every session that they do.
The opinion and conversation will save you a lot, will save the child at first a lot of headache, heartache, and pain, because by you having the conversation allows them to be able to express themselves. Yep. It allows them to process and understand things. And then later on, it benefits you because you have an open door into their way of thinking. You know how many parents struggle to try to understand their children, to try to have conversations with their children about what they're feeling, what their sexuality preferences, how they feel about this, why they want to dress this way when they come into that 13, 14 age and they want to go a completely different way of style and you don't know why. So like that conversation has to start early because it really allows you to dive into who they are at that puberty age where you want that conversation to be easy.
You want to lay a foundation before their tween and their puberty age, because if you do that, then when they go through the normal of not wanting to talk to you when they're, because let's remember some of the stuff that our teens are doing and dealing with, let's remember is normal. Don't get over concerned.
Exactly.
Communication beforehand, when it drops being normal as a teenager, not trying to jump in and do it at 13 and 14, not happening in most cases. I mean, from my youth work experience, I don't know about yours, but
for the most part, that's a struggle. I'm not going to say it can't happen. I'm not going to say therapy can't help and, allow to open up those lines of communication. But if you started earlier, it'd be so much easier. And there is a big conversation, and this is kind of where this conversation came from. There's a big conversation around adoptive parents or parents who adopt children, or foster parents who adopt or foster children outside of their race. And whether it's like, oh, well, that child should be with a Black family or a Latino family or a Caucasian family. Not my opinion. Love is love. Yes, I agree. Love is love wherever you get it from. And sometimes family is not blood.
Yep.
Family is who loves you, who looks out for you, and who appreciates you. However, the culture and the identity and being able to identify with your counterparts, your peers, your teachers is just as important as that love. What were you gonna say?
No, go ahead.
You just can't have one.
Yep.
You got to have both. And just because the child seems happy, the child seems loved, and everything looks peachy, and maybe you got the child at a young age, so you're thinking that they're not paying that any mind because all they've known is you. That's the wrong way to think. Parents need to be considerate that these children will have those thoughts. They will have those feelings of, why do they look like this and everyone else looks like that? Why do I look like this and my family looks like that? Those are important. And that's where this conversation kind of stems from, because yes, love is love, but you have to allow those children to be immersed in their culture and not just watching videos and movies.
The other piece of that, if you really love that child that you've adopted or brought in the home for a period of fostering, I think love would want you to allow them to be familiar with their culture, have that communication with them, because when they leave your house, I don't care how much, because some people may say we want to fully appropriate them into our culture or whatever. There are some things just by level of melanin or whatever that you're not going to be able to do. And so if you really love them, if it was me, I'd want to be very intentional about reaching out to certain type of mentors, programming, arts programs, after school programs, where they can be accustomed and be around those that look like them, and will more than likely, as they grow older, will some form, one way or another, come together through cultural celebration, holiday. Yeah.
I used to have foster children. I'm still currently a foster parent, but I don't have foster children. And I have had children of other races.
Yep.
And yes, going to that child's school that may be 45 minutes away from my home, but to immerse myself in their culture and what they have going on, I think it's unfair for me to have this child and force them to adapt to my lifestyle and what I have going on. And this is the way we do things. It needs to be a mutual ground. It needs to be a middle level. So me going there, me meeting her friends, allowing her friends to call the house, allowing play dates to happen with her friends, and immersing both worlds together so that I'm not pulling this child out of her culture and forcing her to adapt to mine. Or if I got a child at a young age, do not think they're not going to feel that way.
Yeah.
They look completely different. They might not be traumatized by it. It might not affect them to a full-blown extent that causes therapy and is a major concern, but we don't want that doubt in them at all.
Yeah.
Speaking to children with disabilities, same thing. The same way you want to put a child of a different race, you want to immerse them in an environment of children that look like them. If your child has Down syndrome, you want to join a Down syndrome group, meet with other parents, link with other parents that have children of that ability, so that you can create play dates, create a relationship, create a culture, so that your child isn't constantly in an environment of people that don't look like them. I just think that plays a part to what Toy is aiming to do when it comes to mental health and suicide. Nobody wants to feel isolated. And that's what that feels like. That's isolation, when you are one culture or one special ability or even one gender. Even talk about the workplace and being the only female in an all-male environment. You feel some kind of way. You feel like you have to prove yourself more. You feel like you have to do more. You have to overcompensate. And some people feel that they have to do that, or some people just close up. Yeah. And they keep their feelings to themselves. And then now they're trying to identify their self-worth or their identity, or are they good enough? Why just me? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's a I have here impact, but I'll let you proceed.
Yeah. So like you said earlier, which goes to things to consider, put them in the after-school programs, put them in sports, put them in, different groups or clubs. Yeah, you may live out here in the suburbs. Yeah, you might have to drive that 45-minute drive for him or her to play football or basketball or to be in an extracurricular activity just to be with their counterparts. Because your school is predominantly one race, I'm sure your outside curricular activities are also one race. So yeah, you may very well have to drive outside of your community for the purpose and intention of your child's mental health and make sure that they're able to be around people that look like them. Another point I want to make is adults and children. Children, like we stated earlier, don't necessarily mean to be mean, but they're curious. They want to know why you don't look like this, why you don't have this, how come yours looks like that. But in the older world, when it comes to adults and your teachers and your children, now, let's move on from the children at the moment and let's talk about the adults and their responses to your children who are in a predominantly one race culture. There's purposeful. Yeah, sip that. There's purposeful and then there's unconscious. I believe people can unconsciously mistreat, or not mistreat, let me take that word back.
Treat differently
without, not purposefully. I want to be clear on those words. They're not purposefully doing it, but unconsciously may treat your child differently because they either don't know how or not aware, not culturally aware, or could just not care and believe that all children should just be treated the same, right? And your child will feel that. Your child can feel that energy. And that adult might not do it purposefully, but if they only know how to be around this one race, then that's the culture. And that's how they do, and that's how they're going to act. And that culture could be very insensitive to that one child or those 2 or 3 little sprinkle of children's culture and how they are treated at home. And because you could be, let's say you're a family that moved to a whole new neighborhood. That means what you do at home is going to look very different than what's happening in the community. So now it's not like this is a foster child who's in a predominantly one culture home and in a world of one culture home, but this is a child who has the culture at home, but then goes to a society that's completely different. Now these adults are treating your child in a different way. Not purposefully.
Biases and emotions based on what they've heard or what they've observed in the media or teachers, what they've read in a chart. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yes. And then you have the ones who do it purposefully.
Yep.
Maybe they feel as though your child shouldn't be there. Maybe they feel as though your stature or your culture doesn't mix well with them, and their biases start coming through. Don't get me wrong. I do feel like there are adults out there that just love children and don't mean to, but there are adults that do mean to. So now let's bring it back to the parents. You have to be culturally aware, culturally mindful of what environment you're putting your children in. Whether you are the race of that child and you move to a different community, or you are an adoptive parent or a foster parent, you have to be mindful of your children's environment at home, in the neighborhood, at school, and in society in general, because that can really fester a form of mental health and social emotional instability within them of trying to fit in, trying to understand, and having a bunch of people asking them questions that they just don't have the answers to, and then coming home to a family that's not having the conversation with them. And all these feelings are just festering inside them. So I can't stress the importance of having our children immersed in environments in society, in a home that resembles, or at least makes a good effort to resemble to what they look like and who they are in their culture.
Yes, ma'am.
Final thought. Children aren't going to tell you everything. You have to read between the lines and be able to identify their concerns and their issues, right? You open up that conversation. They may not know how to tell you that someone is putting their biases off on you, on them, and making them feel a certain way, but they could just simply be telling you about their day. That, oh, and I went to the lunch table and, you know, Miss So-and-so told me that I needed to go sit at the other end of the table with Michael, who's also brown skinned, and it was okay because, you know, he looks like me too. And then all my other friends, and they had this, and then I had lunch. Now, if you were listening closely, your child just told you that he basically got segregated from the rest of his peers at lunchtime. He's not looking at it that way. He didn't feel it necessarily that was a problem. But if you're having a conversation with your children and you're listening to your children, you'll be able to pick up on things like that maybe they don't know is wrong.
Because you know, if I was the parent and you heard that and they said, "Oh, brown too," I would have said, "So does this happen often? And how often does Miss Perkins ask you to move and go sit next to Michael? Is it in class? Is it in the lunchroom? Is it at recess? Is it on the bus? Well, then we're going to go need to talk to Miss Perkins.
We're gonna have to have a conversation every day at lunchtime. Every day at lunchtime. Interesting. But again, if you were having these dinner conversations, in the car conversations, on the bus conversations, you would have heard this pattern and what's happening every day and where your child's sitting and what they're learning and, you know, different things like that. So it's important to, how is your day today? Mm-hmm. Who's your friends? What's their names? Who's your teachers? Oh, really? And really have that back and forth, because you'll be able to read between the lines. The other flip side to reading between the lines is a child shouldn't have to tell you to put them in a safe environment. You know that as a parent, that I'm not going to put my child around guns and drugs and harmful situations. That's an instinct for you. Mm-hmm. So a child shouldn't have to tell you that I need to be in an environment with people that look like me. I need to be in an environment or a society or a school with my counterparts, or can I get some form of interaction with people that look like me? They shouldn't have to tell you that. As a parent, as a foster parent, as a parent adopting children, you need to be mindful of that. That's also a safety precaution. That's also a social emotional area that you need to pay attention to, that you need to foster and be mindful of if this is your case and situation. There's just certain things they shouldn't have to tell you. As a parent, you should just be aware of. And if you're not aware of it, become aware of it. Educate yourself on it. Inquire about it. You know you got this little black and brown baby in your home. Figure out what you need to do to help foster that child to be the best.
Do me a favor, Krista. Say that one more
time. You know that if you have this little black and brown baby in your home, they should not have to tell you that they need to be around other black and brown children. You need to know that. I'm sure something in you is saying, I need to do more, or I need to reach out more. Don't just let it sit there. Be proactive, take initiative, and do something about it, because nobody wants to feel alone. And that's basically what that is. It's another form of isolation. It's another form of being alone when it comes to identifying with who they are and how they feel.
Two thoughts here. One is, I think, and most of I'm going to bring our executive director in. Out of all of these sessions, Ms. Krista, what I've heard from you at the baseline is communication with the children, how they communicate, allow them to communicate. When you talked about early childhood education, communication with the experts, communication with those that, you know, are supposed to follow up with you, transportation, IEP, and all this stuff. And what you're talking about today is also communication, a form of communication where adoptive parents, or whomever need to have intentional communication with their children. I love the point that you said about kind of at the mission of how Toy founded this, because like if some of us had some of this information 15, 20, in my case, 25 years ago, I think our society would be a lot different, and specifically within Black and brown communities, because generally speaking, mental health seems to be a taboo. And then for us, it is as well. And so over the last maybe, Toy, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years, mental health and therapy has become sexy. It's become a trend. Like when you're in therapy, like people are like, oh, he's well-rounded. You know what I mean? And so I heard two things today. One is, and this is not the opinion of Dee Dee's Cry, nor Miss Crystal, nor Toy, but a lot of the demonstration of the miscommunication between cultures and peer sets for adopted children. I've just seen a lot of that be demonstrated between Caucasian folks adopting Black and brown children. And a lot of times, and now thinking about some of my peers and some folks where that's been a situation, my brain is going back and I'm like, oh, this is why, that's why, from hair to articulation to food. So yeah. All right.
Well, I have family members, and I won't identify the title of relationship, but I have family members who are clearly Black and brown, because I'm Black and brown, and they are living in a community that is predominantly white. And one of them, she is beautiful and voluptuous. And when I say voluptuous, I mean she's curvy. She's not necessarily heavy set. She's just curvy and not petite. And she thinks she's fat. She does not like the way that she looks because she is immersed around skinnier people, more long-haired, blue-eyed people, where she now looks at herself as not good enough, not appealing or attractive. And it hurts my heart that she feels that way about herself. And it is literally, I promise you, literally, because of where she's grown up to, the lack of conversation that has happened. And she beats herself up every day about it. And I mean, in our world, she's thick. She's beautiful. Skinny, big, plus size, you're beautiful. But if you're not around people that look like you, you're going to doubt yourself.
Good point to bring forward is that if we do it, if somebody was doing this with her when she was younger, it might not be the situation as it is now. Toy, you want to jump as we get ready to wrap up?
Yes, but I love that what you did, Crystal, is that how you equate it to as an adult. If you go into a room and you're the only woman in the room or the only man in the room, or if you go into a restaurant and you're like, oh, ain't no Black people in here. Like, you notice that, you feel something. Children are the same way, but they just don't know how to verbalize it. So just take that into consideration. And then also when you were speaking, it made me think of the panel of MECO and mental health that we did, James. And how the kids talked about how they had to code switch, you know, act one way in school and then another way at home. And then it just brought on confusion, you know. So, so be mindful. Think of your child and what they're going through, because if you feel a certain way being the only one in the room, that child feels the same way about being the only one in the room. And like Miss Crystal said, have those conversations. That's all it's about, is communicating with the child and letting them know it's okay and they're okay. You know,
and
that
they're beautiful for who they are.
Exactly.
Words of affirmation are important. Start that early. Then when they go into the world, no matter foster parent, adoptive parent, or the actual biological parent, start those words of affirmation. Even if you're a white parent telling your little Black and brown baby that they're beautiful and their skin color is gorgeous. And, you know, look at mine and look at yours. Yours is beautiful. Mine is beautiful. Look at brown, light brown, dark brown, yellow. You know, start that conversation so that it's an okay thing. And it's not the world teaching your child. I think we said that last time too. Teach your child first, or the world will teach them for you. And the world is a lot more harsh.
I was going to say it's a cool world. And so one of the things I heard today again was communication. But this is just an example of some of the tips and tricks that you can get every single Saturday at 11 a.m. here on Dee Dee's Cry Presents Children's Social and Emotional Support with Miss Crystal and James. Take a screenshot of this real quick. It's also on the Dee Dee's Cry page. but let folks know that they can come into the room and hear conversations like this. I like Crystal today because we were more conversing. PowerPoint, I like PowerPoints. PowerPoints are good. But this was more conversing. And so we'll fluctuate, between the models and whatnot. But you guys can come back every Saturday at 11 a.m., hear from Miss Crystal, hear some of my questions, a little commentary when Miss Crystal sparks things in me. And I'm like, oh, because her and Toy, I think, have enjoyed my learning out of this more than because again, I was around some 3 and 4 year olds lately, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, Saturdays at 11. But no, this is definitely good. And Toy, did you want to go ahead and let folks know how they can support, reach out to Dee Dee's Cry?
Yes. So Dee Dee's Cry, our program and our mission is just about accessibility. And accessibility also means free, right? So Dee Dee's Cry does not charge for this education. You just come on and you can go to our YouTube channel, watch all our past videos. But things do cost money, so please support us. Go to our website, deedescry.com, click the donation button and give. If you want to give by check, make the check out to the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. Put Dee Dee's Cry on the memo line. Mail it to 2 John Elliott Square, Roxbury, Mass. 02119. If you haven't already, like the Facebook page and follow us on Instagram at Dee Dee's Cry.
I just wanted to close out with a couple of notes because people were really encouraged by what they were hearing here. Barlinda Cook, and if you guys are still listening, when you come in on Saturdays, can you just put what town you're listening from so we can sound wonderfully professional and say Barlinda from Newton or Barlinda from Dorchester said good morning.
Barlinda from Brockton.
Oh, this is one of hi Barlinda from Brockton, friend of Miss Crystal, and also Danielle from Boston as well have really came in, and folks are enjoying this and it is helping them. And there's some pieces in here too that I think are applicable more than children emotional and social support, because there's a couple of nuggets I got in here that will be helpful to me at 50. So I'm going to leave that at that. We're going to get ready to wrap up, everyone. Please share this with parents. Send a link to folks' inbox, copy the link and put it in a text message to someone. If you know parents with this particular subject, if you know parents who have adopted and, you fostering or adopted or either taking care of a family member, because sometimes, how can I say this? Sometimes the raising of children isn't always done through the legal court process.
Absolutely.
Family does is what family does. So definitely share this information with them. We definitely want to acknowledge, because she did it. Glennis from Peabody, thank you so much for listening in today. And please share this with someone. But share this because we come into this space to make sure you have the tips and tricks from people that look like you. And really make sure, as Toy said, that it's free and it's out there and it's in a virtual space, so you can watch it at any time. So
I want to add to that. Tips and tricks with also bringing awareness. I think today was more of bringing awareness to the conversation. And yes, the few tips and tricks as far as getting them into after school programs and immersing them into the community, but generally making you aware of the situation so that you can educate yourself about it and do something about it.
Yes, ma'am. Nothing needs to be said after that. You all have a wonderful Saturday, a wonderful resurrection weekend, and we will talk to you next Saturday at 11 a.m. Have a good day.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.